1950s meeting of the minds. This is a special opportunity since we have people from all over the nation and from different backgrounds, including some slaves. As we go along, what I would like to do to begin with, I am the Honorable Mr. Bellos, so if you want to refer to me, that's what you'll refer to me as. We're going to go around really quick. Just say just a really quick your name, just a quick intro, maybe some things about yourself, and so that we can get started. We'll start on this side right here.
My name's Henry Clay, and I'm a United States Senator from Kentucky.
I'm Stephen Douglas, and I'm Senator of Illinois.
I'm Franklin Pierce, an indecisive 14th president.
I'm Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederate States of America.
I'm Henry Ward Beecher, abolitionist preacher who sent rifles to Kansas during Bleeding Kansas.
I'm Harriet Tubman, a former slave, also the person who freed over 300 slaves using the Underground Railroad.
I'm John C. Calhoun, Senator from South Carolina.
I'm Hinton Rowan Helper, and I was a famous author, which happened overnight.
I'm Daniel Webster, American Senator from Massachusetts.
I'm Frederick Douglass, and I'm an abolitionist speaker.
I'm David Wilmot, and I'm a congressman from Pennsylvania.
I am Henry David Thoreau. I'm famous for Walden, civil disobedience, and neckbeards.
I'm John Brown, and I'm an abolitionist.
I'm Abraham Lincoln. I'm the President of the United States, and also known as the Great Emancipator.
I'm David Walker, African-American abolitionist.
I'm Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm a Harvard man, and I came up with the transcendentalist philosophy.
I'm Thomas Stewart, and I'm against slavery. I'm Harriet Beecher Stowe, author of Uncle Tom's Cabin.
We're Dred Scott. We're famous from the famous Supreme Court case. Bye.
I am John Crittenton, and I support slavery, and I'm from Kentucky.
I'm Wayne H. Seward, and I am appointed Secretary of State by Abraham Lincoln.
I'm James Buchanan. I am the 15th President of the United States.
I'm Charles Sumner, the Massachusetts Senator, and I'm the leader of the Radical Republicans.
Wonderful. Welcome everybody today. Hopefully this will be a great debate, and maybe we can solve some of the issues that we're now having in our country. We're going to start off the discussion today on the idea of slavery. Okay? So I'm going to say a statement. I want you to debate the following statement. Slavery is absolutely necessary. Who would like to go first?
If I may.
Mr. Sumner.
I would like to begin by stating my powerful and unwavering disdain for the wretched act of slavery many of you so-called Americans have embraced. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Sumner. Would anyone, Mr. Dew?
I think that slavery is not necessary at all. It is unconstitutional and against the spirit of Christianity. It is not a sin, and the Bible does not clearly say that a master who commits offense by holding a slave is, but it is hurtful. Why take away their happiness because of an indefinite desire for something that they cannot comprehend?
Thank you, Mr. Dew. Mr. Webster.
I am against slavery, but I think it's necessary to keep the Union together.
Okay. Ms. Jefferson Davis.
Slavery is necessary, and the government should not have the right to control the economy of a state and/or states. The government destroys the South as they tear the very foundation that it was built on. And for what? To protect some piece of property that means nothing to them? These slaves are the property of the South, and how dare you justify the taking of it?
Mr. Helper.
Slavery hurts the economic prospects of non-slave holders.
Say that again?
Slavery hurts the economic prospects of non-slave holders in the South.
Okay, Mr. Emerson.
Mankind is part and particle with God. By hurting these human beings, you are in turn destroying God.
Miss Stowe.
Slavery is not necessary. Why can't we assert the Christian love of something?
Back up Mr. Walker's statement saying that each human being has natural born rights.
no matter what color they may be. No human has to be disrespected in that sense.
So when you talk about massive worldwide rights, you're kind of alluding to maybe some of the landmasses that started this country? Okay. All right, Mr. Seward.
I deeply oppose slavery, and I'm part of the movement, and I think it should end.
Okay, remember guys, you don't have to all comment on this topic, but you can if you want. I can't read it. Mr. Crittenden.
I think slavery is needed to keep white supremacy in the South, and that without it, it'd just be corrupt.
Okay, let's go, wow. Okay, Frederick Douglass.
I say, why view African Americans differently? Why say they're different than the white man? Why degrade the liberties of a race? When a colored man is in the same room or in the same carriage with a white man as a servant, there is no talk of social equality. For if he is there as a man and gentleman, he is an exception. What makes the difference? It is not color, but his color is something.
I just want to ask everyone in this room that how can we stand and watch men be enslaved and forced into servitude when our whole government is based on the idea that all men are created equal?
Would anyone like to respond specifically to Mr. Lincoln? Mr. Calhoun.
I believe that the Declaration of Independence, which states that all men are created equal,
why can't the South try the same thing? But if slavery is going to make so much problems within our country, let's leave it to the people to decide, since this is a democracy.
Mr. Douglas,
Mr. Sumner?
when you first drafted the Kansas-Nebraska Act, did you realize the violence that it would create? And I also ask, how can you support an institution that is supported by such barbarous people?
Violence is not my job to institute. That is the president's job to control violence. I built the Kansas-Nebraska Act upon the idea of popular sovereignty, which would allow the people to decide whether they want slavery or not.
Are you pleading ignorance to what happened after it?
Ignorance, that is not my fault. Violence is supposed to be put down by the president. He is the head of the executive branch.
Mr. Lincoln. You said that.
Well, Mr. Douglas was trying to give reason, all right? But he doesn't think it's necessary to be lazy. They don't want to win.
Very something.
How is slavery necessary when rights can be claimed by the African Americans and the whites?
Jefferson Davis.
Slavery is necessary. You're asking the South to rebuild the entire foundation of their economy. The South was not built in the same manner as the North. We are built on an agrarian economy that is dependent on these pieces of property.
David Walker.
My question is why the South has needs so much slave for their economy, okay, but there are white people also. And I think that African American has the right to go against the white owners. White owners.
So the African Americans have the right to go against
Yeah.
them? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Harry Peter Stowe.
African Americans are human beings and work just as hard as us whites. They cannot be disgraced because of their race. They are men. They should have rights.
Okay. One last comment. Did you want to comment?
I think Henry Clay wants to comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Clay.
I'm a bit neutral on the slavery issue because I own slaves.
Hey,
What's the correct say it?
Neutral.
Neutral on slavery. Because I own slaves, but as I once said, I believe that slavery is undoubtedly a manifest violation of the rights of man. But I believe the only workable solution to slavery is colonization.
Colonization. Can you go into a little bit more depth on what you mean by that?
By colonization?
Yes.
If we have colonies making our stuff for us, we won't need slaves.
Oh, so we're not necessarily sending the slaves away. We're going to colonize ourselves
using their resources
so
to
we
supply
can.
our economy.
Okay, so imperialism.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Couple more on this topic. David Wilmot.
I believe that slavery is necessary, but it shouldn't be expanded farther into the West because it's giving the South too much power.
Okay. Did you have your hand up? Go ahead, Mr.
I have a question for Mr. Henry Clay.
Yeah, what's up?
In the past, it seems that imperialist style economies have been done as well as our capitalist style economy. Would you have anything to say towards that?
Past is past, present is present.
Mr. Emerson.
I have a question for Lincoln. Why were you so concerned about preserving the Union instead of just getting rid of the slaves in the first place?
Well, because the Union is the most important thing. It's our country. We built it.
You guys are so concerned with having a society when nature is more important.
Well, see, our society, we built the whole nation. Well, the North is built on pastoralists, alright? The Southern, they were an agricultural economy. Well, they think they need slaves, but they really don't. But I'm fine with them having slaves. It's just slavery should not be allowed to spread throughout the country.
Yeah, I would like to hear from some actual slaves themselves. Mr. Dred Scott.
Okay, so you say slavery should not be allowed to spread.
Because of what? Mr. Who?
Taney.
Oh, Tanny, okay. Did you want to say anything else? What was it like being a slave?
Can you describe maybe how it was so that people here can understand what it was like? What would happen if you did something wrong? Did he try to beat you or he would beat you? Oh, did you ever get flogged? Whipped? How'd that feel? All right. Well, who are you? Oh, Justin Davis.
Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah. You know what religion you are? By any chance?
What is it? As well. What's your religion?
He said Christian.
Oh, okay.
Hey guys, you need to speak up just a little bit, okay?
But,
All right.
but in the Bible it says in the book of Ephesians chapter 6 verse 5, slaves, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart as you would Christ. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, do you consider enslaving a human being to be right? Yes.
John Brown.
I believe that slavery is not necessary and that all men who own slaves should be punished.
How did we punish them? So we should just punish them. We shouldn't have a real, should we have a, some kind of goal in mind as to what should happen to them?
They should be hung or punished severely because it's a sin to God.
Okay. Henry Beecher, Ward Beecher.
I believe that slavery is morally wrong, that it is a Christian's duty to shelter and feed the escaped slaves, that we should not enforce the Fugitive Slave Act. We should go against it.
Okay. Mr. Scott?
Okay, so just because you believe that
value your life?
Do I value my life? Yes. Yes.
You realize that by supporting slavery, you're justifying human torture and economic success.
Human torture, you use that word pretty loosely. Human, to define this piece of property as human?
What if you were that piece of property?
I am not that piece of property.
How are you different from
a white male? That's how I'm different from that.
A pigment of your skin has changed.
A pigment of my skin, my integrity as a human being, which I am.
Have you been to Africa? No, personally. Why would I? How can you possibly know if their integrity if you've never met one in their homeland?
That one in their homeland, I can't use their homeland there as their being human again?
Yes.
Well, that's where we
Differ. These are not human. This is property of the South, which the North is trying to unjustly take from us.
What were they before you took them from Africa, their homes?
I did not take them from Africa. These slaves have been here for hundreds of years. We have built our economy on top of them.
But what were they before they were brought to America?
Hush mode. All right, Mr. Toppin, I think you wanted to... No? No?
Mr. Simpleton.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Emerson, go ahead.
Mr. Lincoln, you've stated repeatedly that slaves are human beings and should be treated so.
Yeah.
However, you've stated multiple times that you're more keen on getting the Union back together, correct? Well, why wouldn't you just free the slaves to begin with? Why would you keep up this corrupt institution that we have running, this charade?
Well, because originally it was necessary for for our union to grow and our country to be whole. But after the South broke away, they made it clear that they valued slavery more than our actual unity.
What is a country to you?
A country I would define as a group of people working together for the good of all the citizens.
And do you believe countries and governments are always correct?
Countries and governments are not always correct, but they're necessary.
We're going to have two more comments on this. I'm going to go to the next question. Harry Tubman and then David Wilmot.
Mr. Lincoln, along with Mr. Emerson's question, why did it take so long for us to be called citizens?
Well, I'd say because of people like Jefferson Davis, Franklin Pierce, Roger Taney, George Fitza, and yeah, people like that.
Okay, well, why was it no justice done when free slaves were brought to the South?
When free slaves were brought to the South? I'm sorry.
I'm gonna interject here a little bit. Just to let you guys know, remember Lincoln was a champion of slaves. He wanted to get rid of slavery, but he really couldn't do it until the war began. And so I would just probably limit your personal attacks on Lincoln, because really it's probably going towards the wrong person. Okay. All right. So yeah. Anyway, we're gonna go to the next topic. Unless you want to just wrap it up.
Mr. Calhoun, I'd like to ask, why did you leave the Southern Congressional Bloc in the Senate against my bill, the Wilmot Proviso?
The Wilmot Proviso added additional territory to us, and they would abolish slavery there, so why would we support it when, because of that? I don't know.
Try. Okay, we are going to move on to the next question. Territorial expansion in the West basically just extended the sectional differences between the North and the South after 1820. Comment on any of the compromises that were created between 1820 and 1860, and do you think a permanent compromise could have been struck between the North and the South to avoid war? Dred Scott.
Okay. Okay, so basically, if compromise could have been carried out, that your case might have not been thrown out because you weren't approved. Okay. Would anyone like to comment either on what Judge Scott said or just basically in general? Mr. Douglas?
California had come in as a free state. There was a one-up, and the balance was shifted. The North had already had more power than the South. So if we had Cuba as a slave state, it would have balanced the power.
I'm just.
Just pierce out.
They like picking on you, don't they?
Could you tell?
Mr. Clay.
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. The question is, territorial expansion in the West basically just extended the sectional differences. I mean, what are we talking about here? Slavery, right? But the differences between the North and the South. After 1820, comment on any of the compromises that were created between 1820 and 1860. And, this is just the second question, do you think a permanent compromise could have been struck between the North and the South to avoid war? So, was war inevitable? Or could the North and South have compromised permanently so that we did not go to war?
Have you heard of the Compromise of 1850?
I have.
I like that. See, I proposed a series of resolutions on January 29th, 1850. That was failed in crucial vote on July 31st, with the majority of my Whig Party opposed. Some of the resolutions were admission of California as a free state, ending the balance of free and slave states in the Senate, prohibition of the slave trade, not the ownership of slaves in District of Columbia, and a declaration by Congress that it did not have the authority to interfere with the interstate slave trade. Just wanna, I'm getting credit.
We'll go with Thoreau first, and then Crittenden, Seward, and then Scott.
I do not believe that the war was necessary. I believe that if we tried hard enough, we could have stopped it. But I have a question for Mr. Clay. In your compromise, are you putting in place things to stop the inevitable, or are you just holding it back? Are you just kind of stopping it from happening?
Before you answer that, do you guys want to switch, or do you want to just answer from where you're sitting?
Switch.
You want to switch? All right. If you want to switch so that you can sit up front if you want.
I'd like some credit if you don't mind.
And then we can continue. Yes. No, because that's after the war. It's just up to 1860. All right. That was a question that was directed towards Mr. Clay. So Mr. Clay is going to now dramatize his answer.
Can you repeat that?
I do not believe that the war was necessary. I believe we could have taken steps to prevent it, but do you believe that in your compromise you're taking steps to avoid having this said war, or are you taking steps to prevent or hold back it from happening until a later date?
Why? Well, I believe the Compromise of 1850 would have delayed the war even longer maybe a couple of decades if it got passed, which it didn't.
Mr. Beecher, back here.
I have a question for
Oh,
Mr. Clay.
so sorry.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Hold on a second. I forgot the gentleman over here. Mr. Crittenden.
I agree with Henry Clay, and I think that it would have postponed the war even farther, and it would have guaranteed the permanent existence of slavery in the slave states and addressed the Southern demands.
Thank you, Mr. Crittenden. Mr. Seward.
I agree with both of them. I'm totally opposed to the compromise of 1850
Can you tell me why?
because it would cause further disruption between the North and the South and cause further problems.
John Brown.
I believe that no compromise would have worked, and the only way to get rid of the issue of slavery is through violence.
Was through violence? Is that what you said? Okay. Mr. Beecher.
Okay. Mr. Henry, in the Compromise of 1850, you made the Fugitive Slave Act even stronger. It made the South more stronger to get slaves, free slaves back to South. And I think the compromise will never work because slave and liberty were fundamentally incompatible, so making a compromise that would actually work, one has to die to make the other ones work. It would never work out. Why did you make the Fugitive Slave Act even stronger?
Well, I don't think you should give all the power to the North. You should share the power with the South and the North.
Well,
you shouldn't choose sides.
But the South doesn't need that many slaves, and they have enough slaves to go over their plantation over 100 times.
They're biased and support the North, then the South don't have as much power. So you have to support both of them.
But you're not supporting the South. You're just You're just supporting the South by.
No, I was trying to pass resolutions that would help the South and the North, so there wouldn't be any violence. Because if the North has more power than the South wants power, there would be violence over that.
So what you're saying is there should be a balance.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But going back to John Brown, I'm acquainted with him, but I do not approve of his plan to start.
I think Emerson was next. Go ahead.
John Brown, arming the slaves in a revolt, wouldn't you think that would just create more destruction?
All right.
You still have your hand up? Mr. Scott and then Mr. Douglas.
This compromise, it could work if only the government can uphold their decisions. Like, for example, I live majority of my life on free soil, so like for my master to bring me to free soil, that's the government's problem. They're not doing their job.
Did I see you? Go ahead.
Mr. Beecher, you say that the compromise of 1850 favored the South only. Did you forget that California became a free state?
Well, no, I didn't forget, but still, they still have more power because of the slaves. Look, if the slaves decided to come to North as the free slaves, why did the South have power to get them back? They shouldn't.
Well, according to the Constitution, they have a right to pursue their property.
No, the Constitution said every man has equal rights. It didn't say that only slaves doesn't have their rights, only whites does. It didn't say that. It says every man has equal rights.
It didn't say that African Americans did have rights?
It didn't conclude that. Still.
Christian. I'm sorry, Mr. Douglas. Christian. I don't know. I don't know where that came from. Mr. Douglas, excuse me.
Alright, growing up as a slave, it was harsh, and people have asked how it felt to find myself on free soil. It's like I finally lived more in one day than in a year of my slave life. It has been rumored that my master was my father, and that his wife did teach me to read, and then when Thomas Auld found out, he yelled at her, and since slavery corrupted her, next time she found me reading, I was punished. And I think slaves deserve the right to be free and from my motto from the North Star that right is of no sex, truth is of no color, and God is the Father of us all, and we are all brethren.
Okay, just to let you guys know, we're real short on time, so if you have something to say, make sure you say it now because we've got like 2 minutes. Go ahead, Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, so you all heard the first-hand accounts of the slaves that we have here and the conflict. At least the bare minimum of the South, and we could have tried to stop it and get rid of slavery, and
Emerson, real quick, then we got to get Harry Beecher Stowe.
I guess this is for everybody. Alright, so if you all would have gotten rid of slavery sooner enough, all these problems would never have happened in the first place. None of these wars or rebellions.
Don't scare me, man. Are you finished or you concluded?
Oh yeah, I'm done. So.
Okay, Mr. Thoreau.
I agree with Mr. Emerson that if we had just gotten rid of slavery before all of this had happened and the compromises had been more focused on getting rid of all the slaves, then we would not have had this very, very tolling war, and not as many people would have died.
Okay, and last but not least, Harry Beecher Stowe.
I agree with John Brown that violence is the only way to abolish slavery because the slaves had no way to defend themselves. Sorry. I agree with John Brown that violence is the only way to abolish slavery because the slaves had no way to defend themselves.
Okay, I'm going to do a coin toss. It's going to be between Jefferson Davis and Mr. Abraham Lincoln back there.
No.
Give me number 1 to 10. You want him to go? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So, as you say, if slavery had been abolished sooner, this could have been avoided. That statement is wrong. You sooner wished to destroy the South than later, but the war was inevitable. The South would fight for their rights as the North tried to take them from.
All right, Mr. Davis.
All right, shoot.
Your presidency is a joke. Presidency is a joke? Yes. You're a terrible president, right? Your entire government, or your so-called country, is based on the fact that you guys focus on states' rights, all right? You guys have no power to levy taxes or anything, okay? You guys issued paper money and raised the inflation rate by 9,000%, okay? You guys want to, centralize your government, but you're too divided.
We stood for a noble cause, for something more than the power you speak of. Yes, we approve of states' rights and we support them entirely, because a nation should be more than one man in charge of all.
Okay, Mr. Helper, last statement. I'm sorry, Mr.
About the Civil War, you should have, you talk about fighting for your rights and everything, and if you would have built more railroads and been more economically stable, you might have been better off into the war. Because you focus more on agricultural economic instead of a farming economic.
Okay, since we are out of time, we're going to have to wrap it up.